The Case of the Wronged Concubine. Long ago, in a bustling town of southern China, there lived a small-time magistrate named Bao Longxing. Though his official title was ninth-rank sesame seed officer, the lowest among officials, he was known far and wide for one thing: his glib tongue. Bao was clever, quick-witted, and endlessly talkative. Though many whispered he cared more for bribes than justice. Bao's wife, Madame Sun, however, was his equal in cunning. She managed his household and often scolded him when he cut corners. Though their nights were filled with quarrels and laughter, theirs was a marriage both real and warm. They lived like countless ordinary couples, sometimes fighting, sometimes making up, yet always bound together. One evening, as the moon hung high, a woman named Qin Xianglian stumbled into Bao's court. Her clothes were torn, her face pale with grief, yet her eyes burned with determination. She told a tale that chilled the room. She had been taken by a wealthy young lord, the son of a powerful family. And when she resisted his cruelty, her husband was framed and killed to silence her cries for justice. Her words stirred pity among the townsfolk, but fear as well. The young lord's family held sway over the region. No one dared offend them. Magistrates before Bao had turned her away, telling her that her case was hopeless. But Bao Longxing, though often mocked as greedy and slippery, had a restless fire in his heart. Here was a chance to prove that even the lowest officer could stand for what was right. He leaned forward, his fan tapping against the desk, and said with a sly smile, "Madam Qin, your suffering will not be buried. Let us see if this small sesame seed can crack the shell of a mighty walnut." And with that, Bao accepted the case, knowing well that he was stepping onto a path shadowed by danger. From the intertwine very start, Qin Xianglian's case was like a rock thrown into a still pond. Ripples spread quickly, and soon the entire town whispered about it. The accused was none other than the spoiled son of Lord Hu, a family whose wealth and connections reached all the way to the provincial capital. Madame Sun tugged at Bao Longqing's sleeve that night, her brow furrowed. "Are you mad? Do you not know who you are facing? The Hus can snuff you out like a candle." Bao Longxing chuckled, pouring himself a cup of wine. "Wife, have you forgotten? I've been mocked my whole life as a sesame seed officer. What more do I have to lose? At least if I die famous." Despite his bravado, Bao knew the storm he was calling upon himself. But when he looked into Qin Xianglian's tearful eyes, he also knew turning her away would gnaw at his conscience forever. The next day, Bao summoned witnesses. Some trembled, refusing to speak. Others, under the shadow of the Hu family, lied outright. But Bao's sharp tongue and trickster wit tore through their words. He used riddles, sudden questions, even jokes, to unsettle the corrupt officials sent to silence him. At one hearing, Lord Hu's men tried to bribe Bao, delivering a chest of silver to his residence. Madame Sun was tempted, her eyes glittering at the coins, but Bao shook his head. "If I take this silver, I sell not only my soul, but also this woman's justice. Wife, for once, let us be poor and proud." It was the first time Madame Sun saw her husband turn away from wealth with such firmness. As Bao pressed on, the Hu family grew desperate. They spread rumors, painting Qin Xianglian as a wanton liar who had thrown herself at the young lord willingly. They even arranged for ruffians to ambush Bao in the night. But Bao, resourceful as ever, escaped with bruises and came back to court the next morning with bandages and a grin, declaring, "See, even fists cannot silence the truth." The case had become more than a widow's cry for justice. It had become a battle between a powerless magistrate and the arrogance of privilege. And for the first time, the people of the town began to whisper, not with fear, but with hope. The day of final judgment arrived. The Hall of Justice was crowded, every seat filled with villagers eager to see how the sesame seed officer would stand against the Hu family. Lord Hu himself appeared, his silken robes gleaming, his son at his side with a smug sneer. Behind them stood soldiers, their armor catching the torchlight. It felt less like a trial and more like a show of power. Bao Longxing, however, strutted into the court with exaggerated flair, his fan flicking open. He looked more like a street performer than a judge, which made the crowd laugh nervously. But those who knew him best understood this was his weapon. Mockery was sharper than any sword. The proceedings began. Lord Hu's lawyers presented forged letters and false testimony, claiming Qin Xianglian had been a willing guest, that her husband's death had nothing to do with them. Each time they spoke, Bao interrupted with sly remarks. "Oh? So a poor widow throws herself at you, and you kill her husband for sport? What generosity!" The crowd chuckled, and the lawyers fumed. Piece by piece, Bao dismantled their lies. He caught inconsistencies, exposed paid witnesses, and revealed bribes hidden in the guise of gifts. Most daring of all, he confronted the young lord directly. "Tell me, young Master Hu, if you are so innocent, why do you tremble when I mention the night of the Lantern Festival?" The young lord's face went pale. His slip of the tongue, remembering details he should not have known, was the crack Bao needed. Gasps filled the hall. The elder Lord Hu roared in fury, ordering the soldiers forward. But at that very moment, Bao Longxing produced a sealed decree from the provincial governor, evidence he had secretly sent for when the trial began. The governor, disgusted with the Hu family's corruption, had authorized Bao to pursue the case fully. The soldiers froze. The tide had turned. With a booming voice, Bao Longxing declared, "The law is not the plaything of the rich. Today, this sesame seed officer delivers justice for the voiceless." The hall erupted in cheers as the young lord was seized, his father stripped of influence. For Qin Xianglian, tears of relief finally washed away years of grief. She bowed deeply to Bao Longxing, her voice trembling. "Sir, though my husband cannot return, at least his soul may rest in peace." Bao, though smiling, waved her words aside. "Rest in peace? Madam, you give me too much credit. I am but a sesame seed blown by the wind. It is heaven's justice that has prevailed." Yet in that moment, even his wife saw him not as a bumbling trickster, but as a man who had stood tall when it mattered most. After the verdict, the town returned to its daily rhythm, but whispers of Bao Longxing's trial spread far and wide. People marveled that a ninth-rank officer, mocked as useless and greedy, had dared to challenge one of the wealthiest families and won. In the small magistrate's home, Madame Sun set out a simple meal. She eyed her husband as he slurped his soup with noisy satisfaction. "You risked our lives, you fool," she muttered, though her voice carried a trace of pride. Bao winked at her. "A fool I may be, but a famous one. Even if we stay poor, at IBDE, least the world will remember my name." Qin Xianglian departed soon after, choosing to live quietly near a temple, offering incense for her husband's spirit. Though her life would never again be free of sorrow, she carried with her the comfort that truth had been spoken aloud and her husband's honor restored. As for Bao Longxing, he went back to his daily work, settling petty squabbles, measuring grain, and scribbling reports. He was still the same sesame seed officer, still prone to jokes and clumsy mistakes. Yet beneath the surface, people saw him differently now. To them, he had become a symbol that even the smallest seed, when planted with courage, could grow into shade against injustice. And so, in that bustling town, when children played in the street and quarreled, they often cried out in jest, "Careful, or the sesame seed officer will judge you." The adults would laugh, shaking their heads, yet their hearts warmed, for they knew that sometimes even a clown could hold the scales of justice steady. And with that, the tale of Bao Longxing's bold case passed into legend. Half comedy, half justice, but wholly unforgettable.